I'd like to welcome you to our latest webinar on developing a coaching culture, Interim Reviews. This webinar will provide you with the opportunity to reflect on the key areas being faced in schools and colleges regarding supporting staff and teaching, provide you with some tips and solutions. Presenting today's webinar is myself, Andy Goodeve, and Becky Howitt. We both have a background in education from a teaching and from a leadership perspective. As the quote reads, a single conversation across a table with a wise man is better than 10 years mere study of books. We can't expect people to improve on their own without support, guidance and quality coaching. Excellence is rooted in professional dialogue. Quality one-to-one professional conversations are a simple and effective way to improve performance. They are regularly used in successful organisations. It's not just about scheduling a meeting in a diary. The discussion must add value. Then there can't be just another meeting to just clutter up the already busy day. Everyone remembers someone that's had a positive impact on their life and career. That individual provided guidance and support. They provided the opportunity for the person just to reflect, and they helped them improve by learning and understanding more about themselves. That seemed to bring a positive change to their behaviour and increase their performance. They weren't necessarily someone in a senior role, but someone who was the right person at the right particular time to develop the particular skill or behaviour. Coaching, in fact, took place. Coaching is the process that aims to improve performance and focuses on the here and now and what's relevant in this moment in time, rather than what's happened in the past or into the future. What makes a quality professional coaching discussion? Well, building a positive relationship is key. There has to be trust in each other, a degree of cards on the table, but in a secure and confident environment. It requires a quality time, effort and commitment to achieve success, not just happen to be squashed in at a lunchtime or something like that. An understanding that everyone is unique and you can't just have one size fits all, and everyone has their own path to succeed. It builds on the positives, not just the negatives. It builds on the strengths. It provides the opportunity for the person just to have a think, to self-reflect and to understand themselves. The big key is the ability to listen, being able to listen and see things from another person's point of view, and realizing it's about creating these small achievable steps to measure success. Rome wasn't built in a day. When this is adopted by everyone, it becomes that supportive culture of wanting to help each other on that journey of improvement. Here's an example of a successful professional discussion and what we're aiming for. First of all, starting off with identifying the strengths. What am I doing well? Sometimes we're very much think about the negatives, but what we're doing well. The next is, where do I want to be? What's the target? What's my ultimate goal? Next step, reality. Where I'm in fact now. The idea is, how am I actually going to get there? What's the journey or path I intend to take? Next step, what I'm actually going to do. So I know where I am, but what am I actually going to do to get there? Do I want to get there? And finally, the last one is, the most important thing is, did I actually get there? My evaluation. One thing we need to remember is, you cannot improve someone who doesn't want to learn and grow, who doesn't want to improve. It's an uphill challenge to provide help and support if a person believes that they have nothing to improve. For a professional discussion, coaching, or interim review to be successful, the person needs to understand where they are now, have a degree of being open-minded to embrace change, and be willing to question themselves. The best people challenge themselves to get better and to improve. It's now time for me to hand over to my colleague Becky Howitt, who will talk through about how IP is able to assist in developing this coaching through professional discussions and interim reviews.
Thanks, Andy. So how does school IP, college IP support developing a coaching culture? Well, we're going to have a look at the key area of how progress can be recorded using interim reviews and check-ins. So it's probably at the time of the year where lots of schools and colleges are conducting interim reviews. So this can be used for the midterm PM review, but also it can be used for any conversation, and we highly recommend that it's used for coaching and mentoring conversations to record those and gain an overview of progress. So we'll have a look at that in more depth. And then the areas that we're going to touch on that also support a coaching culture is the use of forms and self-reflection forms, the use of the collaborator module, the blog in terms of showing discussions and sharing, areas for development, and the video annotation tool. So we're just going to touch on some of those areas. So I'm just going to hop out here, and I'm logged in. I'm logged in as Jessica. Jessica's a teacher, and she's going to just go to my portfolio. So I'm logged in as a teacher. Sometimes I'm logged in as Jessica's line manager at others. So here we are, logged in as Jessica. Jessica can see her portfolio, as can her line manager, and as can her coach see some of it. So first area, interim reviews. So you can see here that a few meetings have taken place over the year. Some are called 10-minute check-ins and some are called spring reviews. Now this is an area, like I've said, it is where you can record a conversation and you can record a snapshot of all of this portfolio data on that date. So it's really good for tracking progress. In this use of it, we've called it 10-minute check-ins. This is where you just choose one focus, make a note of it there. So this one is for objectives only. I'll make that a little bit bigger. Okay, and literally we'll jump straight into there. So this conversation was just about reviewing the objectives, and the line manager could have added some comments in there and changed the status there. Now, although obviously the rest of it could have been reviewed in this 10-minute check-in, that wasn't the focus of this conversation. Finally, the appraiser could have written their own comments and the appraisee written theirs and saved that. So the second example is the mid-year performance management review. That's going to be in more depth. Okay, so we'd expect to see more information here because we're going to be reviewing all of these areas for her midterm review. Reviewing objectives, monitoring, standards, areas for development, etc. So how would you do that? Well, I would have to be logged in as the line manager. So this is where I'm switching screens. Or the coach. So I'm going to select Jessica from the My Staff list. If you're set up as a coach, if you're set up as a line manager, you'll be able to see that. Let's say I've got Jessica sitting in front of me for our coach mentor review. So go to interim. I'm going to go to what next? Add an interim. I'm going to call it April Coach Mentor Review. Okay. So I could put some details there if I wished. I can put some links in there, images, a video even if I wished. Don't need to make any further notes because I'm going to go straight in to review the coaching and mentoring objective. So let's say that's objective number 1, relates specifically to coaching and mentoring. I could add my notes there and change the status of that as I see fit. So let's say that Jessica has met that coaching and mentoring objective. I could then review any coaching and mentoring monitoring, any standards, and I can change the rating of those standards depending on our discussion. Any areas for development that have been set for coaching and mentoring. And we'll have a look at all of these in detail in a moment, how to set those. Any CPD, appraisers' final comments about the coaching and mentoring that's taken place. I'd pass my keyboard over. Jessica would also write her notes. And then we would agree that conversation. I'll put my password in, pass the keyboard over. And off we go. There is that snapshot of where we were at that period of time in the portfolio. And it's as quick and easy as that. You don't have to review every element. You can just do a focused element, as we've seen there. So we've seen what we can review in an interim. And we would recommend using that area to record those conversations. They can't now be amended. So if I just refresh from Jessica's portfolio, you can see that as soon as the line manager has saved that, it obviously also gives Jessica input there. She can read that at any time, but as you would expect, she can't edit any of those areas, but she can read them. Okay. So that's a record for everybody. So next item I wanted to show you and have a look at in terms of coaching and mentoring is how to apply specific forms to that. So it can be a coaching form that the coach has created, and it could be an observation form that the coach fills in, or it could be a self-reflection form for the coachee. So here, just increase that so you can just see that, make that a little bit bigger. Oops. Maybe too big. Here we go. Here you can see we've got the monitoring area there. So that's all monitoring. You've got learning walks, you've got observation forms, you've got work scrutiny, lesson drop-in. Now, I wanted to create a separate section just so I can see all of the monitoring just taking place for self-reflection and coaching. So bear that in mind. You can create a separate monitoring area. And the reason why you might do that is A, to see it all in one place, but B, showing you the line managers and the SLT view, they get to see the My Reports and they will get to see all of that monitoring separately. So they don't have to fumble through the rest of the monitoring that's going on. It's very easy to access and therefore very easy to analyse. So you might want to consider that. So as we can see here, Jessica has been assigned from her coach a lesson observation form, self-reflection, and it's a coaching task that Jessica and her coach have spoken about, that the coach wants her to complete before the next coaching session. So Jessica knows this, she's here, she's logged in. Let's say she's just finished that lesson. So she's going to open up that self-reflective lesson observation form. Okay, she's going to check that the details here are correct. The lesson was for about 45 minutes. She's going to read the questions and the success criteria sitting behind them. And she's going to make a best placed judgment of her own teaching and learning. And she can enter notes here if she so wishes. So she would carry on assessing her teaching and learning. Okay, and putting her own comments. Now she's the monitor at this point. She is the person who's monitoring herself. I felt that the lesson, blah, 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 went really well. This happened, that happened. Okay, now to tie in all of the self-reflection, she's going to set herself areas for development. So what does Jessica think she needs to focus on now? It makes it really accountable. It's an emphasis on teaching, and she needs to focus on higher order questioning. And the action she's going to take, she is going to liaise with her coach, and she's going to research good opening questions, and she would like to observe a colleague. Okay, does she require support? Yes, from her coach. Make all of that happen. And the status is she's not yet started it. She's going to give her a due date. Well, yeah, it's coming up to Easter, so let's be kind to ourselves and give her until June and then add that in. So she's added that. She's now going to go to submit. And that's submitted. So let's see what happens next. Her coach mentor, who has created that for her, will then get an email to say that that's been submitted. Let's go back to Jessica. Or they might look at it in the next 10-minute check-in or coaching and reflection meeting. And here we go. We can now review that as the coach. Okay. And we can view that form. Okay. So that will then feed into my interim review conversation, perhaps, or it might feed into a later conversation about areas for development, perhaps, because we can see that the area for development where she's put focus on higher order questioning, set for a deadline of the 8th of June, and we know that it's come from the monitoring form. If I just make that a little bit bigger, the coaching task that was set in April. So for Jessica, for the coach, it ties that all in. Equally, the coach mentor could set some coaching forms. It could be on an observation, it could be work scrutiny, it could be questions and answers, etc. in that area. Okay, so the next area I'm looking at is collaborators, because you might be thinking, well, how do I set up a coach in a person's area if they don't normally line manage them? That's really easy. You just need to be logged in as a college IP, school IP site administrator, or the line manager can do this. And they can assign people to be a coach mentor here, as Lisa Bailey is, or it might be another for another purpose. You've got this pastoral support manager there, for example. So how do you do that? You would go to what next? You would add a collaborator. You can search via the subject or via the user group, but I just normally put the name in. I can start typing the name, or I can just scroll down here. Okay, and I've selected John. And I can say, well, what do I want John to have a look at? Do I want him to be able to view my objectives and manage them? Well, if they're a coach and mentor, you might want to give them management, because you might want them to set an objective for you, perhaps. So you would select what they need to see and at what level. I'll let them manage my monitoring there. Oh, definitely interim review, definitely manage that. Okay, so save that. So there we've got another coach mentor, or another collaborator. Now, what would John see? John would get then, if he hasn't already, he would, here we go, get access to the My Staff tab, if he hasn't already, and then the list of the people who he now coaches. Okay, so we've covered interims, we've covered coaching and self-reflective forms, we've covered adding a coach as a collaborator. So what happens if I'll stay on the coach. What happens if the coach wants to start a conversation with the coachee? The best thing to do is, rather than getting stuck with a load of email trails and trying to look at your emails for information and look at college IP or school IP for information, it's far better to keep everything related to these areas in school IP, college IP. So how do we do that? Let's find just what I would do. I would go into my own portfolio as a coach, and I would select activity feed, go to what next, and add a blog. It's not a blog as such, it's like a messaging system as well. So my subject is coaching review. Do I need to link it to something? Well, it might be that I could link it to the coaching objective. Okay, but not necessarily. But I would select the type, and now I've entered here coaching and mentoring as a type. And like I say, you can change these lists, and the reason why is because then it makes it easier to group all of that information and find it when you're filtering. Okay, so my message is great course to read prior to our next meeting. Now, to link to that resource, I could either put a web link to it. If it's a web link, I could insert a picture, insert a video, but I can link it perhaps to a CPD activity or an area for development. I can do that there. I could start the conversation off there if I wanted to. Okay, so I want to share this blog with Jessica. She is my coachee, and I'm just going to check that it was only sending it to Jessica. I don't want it to send it to my line manager. That's not necessary. I'm going to add that there. Okay, so Jessica will get that message. She'll get an email alert saying she's got that message, and that will be in her sharing feed. I can also share information with her, I can share evidence. So let's say I want to share a piece of evidence with her. I would, it can be a document, it doesn't have to be evidence. It could be a document, it could be a lesson plan, it could be some coaching and mentoring tips, for example. It could be a file extension or just text, or a web link. I'm going to create a file extension. I'll select my file. Okay, let's say it's a learning behaviour strategy that I'm working on with Jessica. Okay, I could link it to elsewhere, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to share it with Jessica. Check who it's shared with, and that now is shared with Jessica. Okay, again, she'll get an email alert and she'll find it in her own sharing feed when she's logged in. Okay, so we've touched on areas for development and we've touched, moving to Jessica, let's go and have a look at Jessica again. Jessica can see that in the areas for development, from that monitoring form we looked at earlier, she set this area for development herself, focus on higher order questioning, and that came from that monitoring form. At any time, Jessica could set her own areas for development from her own self-reflections. She would, she hasn't got the ability to do that. So that would need to be changed in the settings. So that's easy peasy. That's worth noting that if you can't see areas for development, it can be changed by the site administrator. So the line manager can do that, or the coach can do that by going to the My Staff, selecting Jessica, remembering that they can see what Jessica sees, areas for development, and they can add an area for development for Jessica. Okay, and these can be added at any time, coming from any discussion, any interim, any focused 10-minute conversation. The emphasis this time is on personal development. It's not linked to a monitoring form. And you can type in the area for development, any action needs to be taken place, as well as any support, giving it a deadline and adding that in. So here we have that area for development. And when we refresh Jessica's screen, you can see that she has that there. Equally, like I say, if that setting was turned on for Jessica, she'd be able to add that in for herself too. Okay, so finally, we're going to have a look at the video annotation tool for self-reflection. Now, this sits alongside all of school IP, college IP, but it really deserves to be a project in its own right. So the idea is that Jessica has recorded an aspect of her teaching and learning in the classroom. She's done it with the coach. The coach might have also been there and maybe helped with the equipment, maybe set it up, but equally, it's very easy for Jessica to do that herself. We have a free app available in order to not just take evidence and record CPD and keep standards up to date, but to record lesson observations. So there's no saving that's required. It just goes straight into the evidence. Here you can see an example of that. So I would click on that video and I can watch myself teaching or an aspect of the student's behaviour or whatever the focus is and wherever the camera's pointed. Now, the idea of this is that it offers an extra pair of eyes and ears in the classroom. It allows the coachee to review themselves, but also it allows them then to share it with the coach so they can review the coachee as well. And they do that by the use of these annotations here. So as I'm watching the video, I would pause it in places. I would create an annotation observing my teaching or learning that's going on in the classroom, and I would add that in. The video continues to play. I can pause it, I can rewind it a bit to watch that again. And I can create another annotation regarding another element that I have observed about myself. Okay, and add that in. Now, as that's playing, you can see that every time I add an annotation in, it actually gives it a timestamp. So I can now share this with my coach, and my coach can read my focused observations. We're not going to observe the whole lesson, that just wouldn't be viable, it wouldn't be useful. But my coach could then watch that part of the video whilst they're reading my annotations. And then they can also create their own annotation. You've got a conversation going. Okay. So that's how video annotations work. It's a really powerful coaching and mentoring tool. Perhaps, like I say, deserves to be treated as a whole separate project in itself, away from the performance management tools and features of school and college IP. But it does work really well for coaching and mentoring. Okay, so I'm aware that I've been doing a bit of show and tell for quite a few minutes now. Just to recap on those areas that we've looked at the key area of using the interim review tool for PM reviews, for coaching and mentoring catch-ups, for check-ins, whatever you want to call those. And then we looked at some of those other areas. We looked at coaching forms, self-reflection forms, all settings to set them up for self-reflections, how you can add a coach as a collaborator, how the coach can use the blog for messaging and sharing, how areas for development can be set as a result of all of these interactions that are going on, and then how the video annotation tool can be used as part of this process. So I'm just wondering now if anybody has any questions, anything that they would like for clarification on any of these areas. If anybody would like to unmute their mics and chat about that. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening. Before you go, I just want you to just be aware that we offer free and unlimited online training on any of those areas that we've just had a look at, or indeed any other area. The way to book in is the calendar link on both Andy and mine's email signature rather. But just give us a ring and we'll get that sorted out. There are lots of other webinars. This webinar has been recorded and it will be uploaded at the beginning of next week onto our website, www.deventioeducation.com/webinars. There are lots of other webinars on lots of other areas on there as well. So please do have a look at those. And here are a few of them: the importance of collaboration, school IP overview, managing reviews, managing CPD portfolios, etc., etc. So if you're interested in any of those areas, here's our contact details. Please do get in touch. Have you got any questions, Soraya?
Hi there. No, I thought that was brilliant, the webinar. And once the download is available, I'll download it and send it to the project group